A boy walks out of a poison fog that would liquefy a normal man's lungs. He's carrying the elder who made it like a sack of broken groceries. The entire arena goes dead silent. That moment comes later. But you need to know it's coming, because right now, everyone in that academy thinks this kid is a nobody. Rewind. An arrogant clan heir offers to let him strike first, smiling like he's doing charity. 1 second later, that heir's arm is on the ground, and his brain still hasn't caught up. Rewind further. An assassin disguised as a prisoner fires a forbidden kill shot at point-blank range. Our guy cuts him down with a sword style that hasn't existed for centuries, a technique he decoded from scratches on a dead man's tomb. And before even that, a rival poisons his face with high-grade acid, watches the skin melt, starts celebrating, then watches in absolute horror as the skin stitches itself back together, smooth as glass, in under 10 seconds. How does a banned, powerless, half-blood prince with zero cultivation end up doing all of this? Let's go back to the very beginning. The demonic cult is exactly what it sounds like. An empire built on brutality, internal war, and the iron law that power is the only currency that matters. At the top sits the cult lord, a man who fathered 7 sons and acknowledges maybe 3 of them. Cheon Yeo Woon is the 7th. His mother was a concubine. The wrong bloodline, the wrong connections, and from the moment he could walk, the 6 ruling clans of the cult made sure he knew it. They poisoned his mother, not quickly, slowly, a microscopic toxin so precisely engineered that she spent years deteriorating while every physician called it a mystery illness. The boy watched her die piece by piece. He went to his father. His father looked through him like he was furniture. Then the clans forced a young Yeo Woon to sign a blood oath, legally banning him from ever learning a single basic martial technique. They stripped him of the right to cultivate before he was old enough to understand what cultivation even meant. Their logic was clean and cold. No power, no threat, no problem. They underestimated him. Here's the thing about the world Yeo Woon lives in. Power is measured in internal energy, cultivated through the body's 14 meridian pathways over decades of brutal training. Rank titles move upward. Advanced martial artist, specialist, expert, master, grandmaster. A grandmaster doesn't just fight well. A grandmaster can manifest energy blades from bare hands, move objects through the air with thought alone, and hit with force that reshapes geography. The clans spent decades to reach those heights. Yeo Woon has none of it. Not a drop. So the clans decide to be thorough. Just before the Demonic Academy opens its gates, an event that only happens once every 10 years, a 4-year gauntlet that defines the cult's entire next generation of power, they send a kill squad into the forest. Clean it up. Erase the problem before it even gets through the door. They find Yeo Woon in the trees. He gets stabbed through the torso. And that is where the story actually starts. Because the blade goes in, the blood pours out, and Yeo Woon hits the dirt. And then a stranger appears. Not one of the assassins. A different figure, dressed in clothes that don't match this era, moving with the calm certainty of someone who has already seen how this story ends. He doesn't say much. What he does is press something against the back of Yeo Woon's neck, a device, small and cold, and inject 482 million microscopic machines directly into his bloodstream. Nano, a 7th-generation artificial intelligence running on biological infrastructure, designed to do things no cultivation technique has ever dreamed of. It can scan a martial art from visual observation alone, then rewrite the user's muscle fibers to physically replicate it within hours. It runs virtual reality combat simulations directly in the brain, full sensory, full resistance, real training experience generated from nothing. When the body is damaged, Nano reroutes cellular metabolism to repair at speeds that would look like magic to anyone watching. And it runs a constant automated defense protocol. Touch Yeo Woon with intent to harm, and you get hit with a bioelectric shock that drops you where you stand. The assassins get nothing from their mission. Yeo Woon gets up, he walks out of that forest and arrives at the Demonic Academy on the first day, and here is where the insults begin stacking. The academy is monolithic, a fortress of stone and structured brutality that accepts students once a decade and chews through them across 6 elimination stages. Fail any stage, you don't go home. You go to the labor camps, permanently. The institution doesn't believe in second chances because the institution is not interested in producing survivors. It is interested in producing weapons. Yeo Woon arrives at the gate and cannot enter. His entrance identification badge is gone. Not lost, stolen. Deliberately removed by clan agents to make sure he stands outside while every other cadet files past him. They want him humiliated in front of everyone before a single lesson begins. They want him to see his father at the opening ceremony and understand exactly how alone he is. And sure enough, the cult lord stands at the head of the ceremony, and his eyes pass across his seventh son without the tiniest flicker of recognition. Not contempt, not shame, nothing. Yeo Woon is a blank space in his father's field of vision. Our guy watches this, files it away, and begins calculating. Stage 1 of the Academy trials is sound. The Sound Clan Elder takes the field holding an instrument built to weaponize vibration, a device that floods the examination hall with frequencies calibrated to cause internal rupturing. Most cadets start bleeding from their ears within the first 30 seconds. The ones with weak foundation buckle entirely. This is the first cut, designed to wash out anyone whose internal energy isn't solid enough to buffer the resonance. Yeo Woon stands perfectly still. Because Nano has already read the threat, identified the precise frequencies, and shut down his auditory nerve pathways entirely. Complete deafness, self-administered, instantaneous. The sound waves hit him and find nothing to grab onto. He feels the floor vibrate. He watches his classmates around him go pale and start swaying. He breathes. He passes stage 1 without a single internal tremor. But here is the beautiful part. He can't let anyone know that. The whole system Yeo Woon is operating inside depends on people believing he is exactly what the clans told everyone he is. A powerless, low-blood charity case clinging on through sheer stubbornness. The moment someone with authority looks at him and sees real potential, every protection he has disappears. The clans will move immediately. So at the very end of the sound test, when it's over and people are recovering, Yeo Woon deliberately triggers a blood-vomiting episode. Not real damage. Controlled deception, self-inflicted, precise enough to look catastrophic. He hits the ground spraying blood while looking like a man whose organs just gave out. They carry him to the infirmary. Dr. Beck, the Academy's physician, is the first person to see him up close. The man is eccentric. The kind of doctor who's been around long enough that he's more fascinated by anomalies than he is concerned with protocol. He runs his examination and immediately finds something that shouldn't exist. Yeo Woon's meridian pathways are completely clear. No blockages, no cultivation, but also no damage. And his recovery speed after what should have been a serious internal injury is not possible. Dr. Beck doesn't report this. He covers it. Professional fascination, basic decency, and maybe something else. The recognition that this particular patient is more interesting than anything else in this building. The infirmary becomes a staging ground. Right Guardian Sub finds him there. Sub is one of the cult's elite guardians, perpetually drunk, seemingly irreverent, and possessing the kind of combat ability that nobody in the academy should underestimate. He stumbles into the medical ward claiming a social visit, runs his own cultivation sense over the boy, and detects what Dr. Beck found. 0 blockages, 14 pristine meridian pathways, and a physical foundation that has never been touched by energy. Sub is the kind of man who respects things that don't add up. He sits with Yeo Woon in the dark and then, quietly, forces open his physical energy pathways directly, a technique that would cripple someone with existing cultivation, but on an empty system works like unlocking a door. Yeo Woon's body lights up with the capacity to receive internal energy for the first time. Then Sub leaves. And then the night gets more interesting. A cadet named Hubong climbs through the infirmary window. He's an agent of the Spring Clan, assigned one job: sever the prince's tendons while he sleeps, ensuring that even if he manages to graduate, he'll never fight properly again. It's a clean, deniable hit. Hubong is confident. He gets close. Nano's defense protocol fires. The shock drops Hubong instantly. Not hard enough to kill, but enough to make it clear that the night just went very wrong for him personally. Yeo Woon sits up. He takes out acupuncture needles, thin, precise, and begins pressing them under Hubong's fingernails one at a time while asking questions in a completely calm voice. Hubong, to his credit, tries to tough it out. He manages 2 needles before the confident act collapses entirely. He tells Yeo Woon everything: the Spring Clan's orders, the network of clan agents inside the academy, every detail he knows. He weeps. He begs. And then something unexpected happens. Yeo Woon looks at this broken, crying, completely defeated man and decides he's more useful standing up than on the ground. He recruits him. Hubong, freshly bald, a cosmetic consequence of the interrogation, pledges absolute loyalty with the specific intensity of a man who has just learned exactly what crosses his new master and wants to make absolutely sure he never does it again. He becomes a fanatic. One of the most genuinely devoted people in the eventual faction. Sub returns a second time, bringing a gift. A stolen Dragon Sphere pill. The Dragon Sphere is a cultivation resource so dense it contains 30 years of internal energy in a single ingestion. For a normal cultivator, taking one carries serious risk of energy overload. Yeo Woon's body at this point has zero stored energy. He's running on an empty tank, and Nano immediately recognizes what this means. It overrides every biological limiter. The 30 years of energy floods in, and Nano captures it with perfect efficiency. Not a drop wasted, not a single pathway damaged. What takes a master cultivator decades of careful fractional progress, Yeo Woon absorbs in one session on an infirmary bed. He walks out of the medical ward a different person, though nobody looking at him would know it. He gets assigned to Group 8, low ranking. The sort of assignment the clans arrange for people they want to watch fail in controlled obscurity. His group mates are a mix of low-born cadets and minor clan members. Nobody important, nobody powerful, nobody paying much attention. Except one person does pay attention. Spring Clan heir Mugwan decides the first week is a good time to establish hierarchy. He finds Yeo Woon in a secluded section of the training forest and makes a series of statements about the prince's mother. Degrading, specific, designed to provoke and humiliate. This is the first real fight. Mugwan uses traditional martial stances, the structured, flowing combat forms that high clan heirs train in from childhood. He's technically proficient. He's been doing this his whole life. Yeo Woon has been running simulations. Nano's augmented reality combat system generates digital opponents inside the user's perceptual field. Full sensory, full resistance, accurate to real technique. Yeo Woon has been fighting phantoms of his enemies in his private room, building experience against styles he hasn't physically encountered yet. The moment Mugwan commits to his opening stance, the system already has a counter mapped. What Mugwan is not prepared for is boxing. Yeo Woon hits him with combinations that don't exist in any traditional manual. Straight strikes and pressure angles from simulated martial arts that predate this entire world's combat vocabulary. Mugwan's stances aren't designed to deal with the angles. The clan heir goes down hard, and stays down with multiple fractures while Yeo Woon stands over him in complete calm. Message delivered. The forest beating doesn't go unnoticed. The Spring Clan notes it, files it, and upgrades their threat assessment on the 7th prince from inconvenient to needs monitoring. But they don't move yet. They're still operating on the assumption that he got lucky, that Mugwan was careless, that raw stubbornness doesn't equal actual power. They're going to keep being wrong about this for a very long time. Back in his room, Yeo Woon is doing something the clans would find considerably more alarming than a fistfight in the woods. The augmented reality system Nano runs inside his visual field isn't just for combat review. It's a full simulation environment. He pulls up every enemy he's cataloged so far and starts running scenarios. Different attack sequences, different environments. Nano adjusts the opponent behavior in real time based on the actual techniques those people use, cross-referencing every scan it's made since the academy gates opened. He fights the phantom of Mugwan until there's nothing left to learn from it. Then he moves to bigger targets. Hours in his dormitory room that look, from the outside, like a young man sitting very still. Inside, a full combat library is being built from scratch, one session at a time. This is the engine nobody in the academy can see. Every public display of raw instinct or desperate stubbornness that the instructors observe is actually the output of hundreds of simulated hours. When Yeo Woon throws a punch, it's already been thrown 10,000 times. Stage 2 arrives, the group exam. The format shifts from individual elimination to team-based performance. Squads are measured against each other in structured field operations. Yeo Woon's group has been limping along under a mediocre leader, someone placed there by clan arrangement rather than merit. Then that leader gets ambushed, crippled by an unknown assailant before the exam even begins. Convenient, for someone. What nobody planned for is what happens when Yeo Woon steps into the vacuum. He takes command of Group 8 with the ease of someone who has been thinking 3 moves ahead since the moment he arrived. His tactical approach is deliberate misdirection. He deploys his team in a false number formation, making the opposing group believe they're facing fewer fighters than they actually are. The deception controls the entire engagement. drawing the enemy into terrain and timing that Yeo Woon has already mapped. Group 8 wins, but the real moment isn't the victory. His half-sister's squad is on the opposing side. She's a legitimate daughter of the cult lord, actual clan backing, genuine cultivation resources, the full benefit of noble blood and official recognition. Everything Yeo Woon was denied. In any sane world, family is off limits. But this isn't a sane world. It's a demonic cult academy that deliberately ignores dormitory violence and nocturnal assassination, because watching cadets establish natural hierarchies through raw force is considered part of the curriculum. She knows exactly who he is. She makes her move during the exam, committing to an ultimate technique, the kind of finishing strike that a cultivator at her level trains their entire life to land cleanly. It's powerful, it's precise. It is absolutely the right move against the opponent she thinks she's fighting. She is not fighting that opponent. Yeo Woon reads the technique before it fully launches, steps through the gap in her form that she doesn't know exists, and neutralizes it. Then he severs her arm at the shoulder. Clean cut. No hesitation. No acknowledgement of the bloodline they share. She hits the ground. The exam is over, and Yeo Woon's group stands in the middle of a very quiet field with a very clear message attached to the outcome. Do not mistake this situation for a family matter. The clan observers watching the exam results come in are starting to get a very uncomfortable feeling. Stage 2 is cleared. Now Yeo Woon does something that most aggressive, power-hungry protagonists don't bother to do. He goes to the library. Not for casual reading. The Academy's library is tiered, with access to the deeper floors restricted by rank and approval. The lower floors have standard techniques. The upper floors have things that clans guard, like state secrets, elite arts that took generations to develop. Yeo Woon navigates the restrictions, gets access, and goes to work. Nano doesn't read one manual at a time. It scans dozens simultaneously. Visual absorption, cross-referencing, categorizing. Yeo Woon moves through shelves while Nano builds a comprehensive internal archive of everything that has ever been committed to paper in this library. He doesn't need to carry a single scroll out. He doesn't need to memorize a line. Every technique is already inside him. But the real discovery isn't on the shelves. It's in the deepest part of the lower floor, the ancestral chamber, where the Academy's founder is entombed in a sapphire monolith. The stone is old and covered in what every previous visitor has dismissed as vandalism, random slashes and scrapes across the surface, the kind of marks a disrespectful student might leave as graffiti. Nobody has looked closely enough. Nobody had the right eyes. Nano scans the marks at microscopic resolution. They're not random. They're a record. An ancient master, working at the absolute limit of their ability, spent years scratching this stone, not decorating it, not defacing it, attempting to reverse engineer something. The cuts are attempts to document a counter style, a mechanical response to a sword technique so advanced that this master could see it and could not replicate it, and was desperately trying to understand why. The scratches map out every angle, every failed attempt, every fractional insight the master managed to extract before running out of time. What they're mapping is the demonic heavenly sword art, the true original, not the versions that have circulated through the Academy for generations. The real thing, the ancestral technique that the founder built the entire institution around, but never formally documented because it was meant to be earned, not taught. The master on the tomb couldn't reproduce it, couldn't even fully grasp it, but they left enough structural breadcrumbs, enough failure-mapped angles, that someone with the right analytical tools could work backward to the original, from the record of everything that didn't work. Yeo Woon counts the microscopic structural dots, maps the geometry. Nano runs the structural analysis. He reconstructs the demonic heavenly sword art from a tomb, and then he files it away. Because the right moment to show a technique like that is not now. The Academy, however, is not done generating problems. Poison Clan heir Jong-soon has been watching the Seventh Prince with the particular attention of someone whose family has specific reasons to want him dead. Jong-soon is a specialist. His cultivation path runs through toxic arts, the kind of techniques that make conventional close-range combat beside the point. He spends his off hours cultivating lethal flora, working on preparations that will let him handle the problem of Yeo Woon without anything that looks like a direct duel. He's not careful enough about where he does his work. Yeo Woon finds him. Jong-soon's response to being discovered is immediate and confident. He throws his highest-level acid compound directly at Yeo Woon's face. It's a face-melting substance, High enough grade that it should be irreversible within seconds. He watches it land, watches the skin start to dissolve, and then he watches Nano put it back together. Cellular reconstruction at speed. The acid is identified, the damage is mapped, and skin and tissue are rebuilt from the cellular level outward. The whole process takes under 10 seconds. One moment the prince's face is dissolving, the next moment it isn't. Jong-soon is staring at smooth, unmarked skin with the specific expression of a man whose entire threat model just collapsed. What follows is not kind. Yeo Woon systematically dismantles Jong-soon, not just in the physical fight sense, but completely. He shatters his cultivation center. The Dantian, the internal energy reservoir that a martial artist spends their entire life building and protecting. Gone. Destroyed. Jong-soon, the arrogant heir of one of the cult's 6 most powerful families, is reduced to crawling in the mud, screaming for help that isn't coming, weeping with the sudden understanding that his entire future just ended. But before he loses consciousness, Jong-soon says something. His family supplied the original poison that killed the prince's mother. He knows this. What he also knows, and what comes out of him in the specific looseness of someone who has nothing left to protect, is that his family was operating under orders. The instruction came from a woman in one of the other ruling clans, a veiled lady whose exact identity Jong-soon doesn't know. His family were instruments, not architects. Yeo Woon processes this information, files it, then synthesizes a crude antidote using Nano's chemical breakdown capabilities to keep Jong-soon alive, not out of mercy, but because a dead witness is useless. Jong-soon will live long enough to testify. Eventually, the director of the academy finds out about the destroyed Dantian. This is the kind of act that the institution cannot officially ignore, regardless of how much violence happens after dark. Yeo Woon is sentenced to 5 days of solitary confinement. Stone walls. No visitors. Controlled isolation that is meant to be both punishment and warning. What it becomes instead is an opportunity, because Elder Baeyu, patriarch of the Poison Clan and 12th Council Elder, has been waiting for exactly this window. The moment the prince is behind a closed door with no witnesses, Baeyu moves. He infiltrates the confinement cell. An elder of his rank can make this happen, and he arrives with the specific purpose of ending this problem permanently and untasably. He beats the prince first, thoroughly, with the unhurried confidence of a man who has already won and is simply executing the last step of a plan. Then he produces a slow-acting energy drain poison. Not a quick kill, but a compound designed to leach cultivation out of a person over weeks, leaving them alive and aware as their power dissolves, until there's nothing left worth killing. He forces it down Yeo Woon's throat and leaves. Nano gets to work. The poison is sophisticated, but sophistication means chemical complexity, and chemical complexity is exactly what Nano's analysis systems exist to process. It identifies every active compound, maps the intended biological pathway, and begins selective purging, stripping out the harmful components and leaving only the residual energy content. The toxin Elder Baeyu used was concentrated enough to drain years of cultivation. The residual chemical mass, once the harmful elements are removed, is pure energy substrate. Nano converts it directly. When the process completes, Yeo Woon's internal cultivation sits at 90 years of energy equivalent. The man who came to destroy him accidentally provided the biggest single power jump he's had since the Dragon Sphere. Elder Baeyu has just become, inadvertently, one of Yeo Woon's most significant patrons. The confinement cell, as it turns out, has more to offer. Exploration reveals a hidden passage, not marked on any architectural plan, not mentioned in any document. Yeo Woon follows it deep into the Academy's foundation and finds himself in an ancestral chamber that makes the library's sapphire tomb look like a footnote. The Cave of the Sealed Demon, or at least its entrance, a labyrinthine complex beneath the institution that predates the Academy itself. He doesn't go all the way in, not yet, but Nano records everything, visual mapping of every corridor, every junction, every chamber entrance, building a complete architectural model of a place nobody else knows he's been. He files this too, because the Academy's later stages are going to need it. He returns to the general population after confinement with 90 years of cultivation, a reconstructed ancestral sword art, a complete library archive, and a hidden map of an underground complex that will become the site of the most important exam yet. He looks exactly the same as when he went in. Stage 3 of the Academy trials is the brutal one. The format forces cadets to operate in 12-man battle formations and execute prisoners from rival faction conflicts. Actual high-level fighters from outside the Academy who have been brought in as live targets. The intent is to test whether students can function as coordinated killing units under real pressure. The prisoners are not passive. Several of them are master-level cultivators. One of them is not actually a prisoner. A master-level enemy assassin has infiltrated the test, disguised as a captive. He's been inserted specifically to eliminate a high-value target, Yeo Woon, using a forbidden technique that operates below the threshold of standard detection. He waits for the right moment, commits to the strike at point-blank range, and fires the full-power forbidden technique with the certainty of a professional who has executed this kind of hit before. Yeo Woon draws. The demonic heavenly sword art, the ancestral technique reconstructed from microscopic scratches on a dead founder's tomb, fires once, clean and total. The assassin is cut down before the technique fully lands. One exchange, zero theatrics. The surrounding cadets and observers are still processing what they just saw when it's already over. The style that this man used, nobody has seen it before, not in this form. The instructors watching the exam can't identify it. The clan observers who have seen every technique in the official manuals have no reference point. Something happened in that moment that doesn't fit any existing category, and everyone feels it even if nobody can name it. Yeo Woon sheathes and moves on. The aftermath of Stage 3 creates an opening he's been building toward. The position of group leader carries a physical marker, a badge that confers genuine authority within the Academy's hierarchy. The last contested badge belongs to Senior Instructor Ho Jin Chang, a master-level fighter who has held his position through demonstrated ability. Yeo Woon challenges him publicly, a bare-handed duel for the badge, no weapons. Ho Jin Chang is a master. His internal energy reserves are decades deep. His technique is refined and practical, built from years of actual combat experience at the Academy. The defensive structure he presents is legitimately formidable, the kind of wall that has turned back every student who's tried to take a badge from him. Yeo Woon walks through it. Not by overwhelming power alone, by angles. The ancestral style operates on principles that the current generation of techniques were built to counter, but have drifted far enough from the source that they no longer actually do. Every defensive formation Ho Jin Chang activates is calibrated against techniques that evolved after the original style was lost. Against the original, the defenses point in slightly wrong directions. The instructor's wall comes apart. Yeo Woon takes the badge. The student body watches. The clans watch. The administration watches. And a very specific kind of silence spreads across the Academy. The silence that happens when a situation everyone thought they understood turns out to be something completely different. Right after the badge duel, a desperate cadet approaches Yeo Woon with a request that has nothing to do with power or politics. The cadet's name is registered as Mongol Woo. Male by all appearances. Standard uniform, correct posture, nothing obviously out of place. But something doesn't fit. Small structural inconsistencies in how the body moves. Subtle pressure patterns in the skin around the face that Nano flags immediately during a casual scan. The mask is good. It's not good enough. Yeo Woon looks at Mongol Woo and sees Moon Koo, the granddaughter of the 9th Council Elder, wearing a prosthetic human skin mask engineered to pass inspection at close range. She's been living inside the Academy as a male cadet for the duration of the program, and the reason she's here at all is not ambition. Her brother is disabled. In the demonic cult's internal hierarchy, a disabled son of a ranking family is not a dependent to be protected. He's a military resource to be deployed at minimal cost in situations where expendable bodies are needed. The main clans have plans for him. Moon-koo is here running interference, trying to accumulate enough status to make her brother too politically inconvenient to simply discard. She's been carrying this alone since she arrived. When Yeo Woon identifies her, really identifies her, sees through the mask completely, she breaks. The prosthetic skin comes off in his private room, and underneath it is someone who has been operating under genuine terror for months, doing a credible impression of being fine. She explains everything. The brother, the clans. What happens if her cover fails before she can build enough protection? Yeo Woon accepts her into his faction without negotiation. The reasoning is straightforward. She's competent, her situation creates absolute loyalty, and she understands secrets. Someone who has been successfully maintaining a false identity inside a surveillance-heavy institution for months is exactly the kind of person worth having close. What Yeo Woon does not entirely account for is that removing the mask reveals that Moon-koo is, by any reasonable measure, extremely striking. He handles this information with the composure of a man who has survived assassination attempts, clan conspiracies, and a face full of acid. Which is to say, he handles it with slightly less composure than he handles everything else, and he doesn't comment on it, and they both pretend the moment didn't happen. The dormitory logistics do not make this easier. Group 8's living quarters are shared, and the male cadets have the relaxed physical comfort of people who have been living in close quarters for months. Bathing happens communally. Nudity is not considered remarkable. Moon-koo, maintaining her male cover, has to stand in these situations projecting absolute normalcy, while her body temperature does something noticeably different. She is very good at her cover. This particular aspect of it requires a level of dedication that deserves specific acknowledgement. The faction grows. What started as Yeo Woon, one bald, fanatical convert, and a handful of Group 8 cadets expands steadily. Low-born students, minor clan members without real backing, people who have been surviving the academy on grit rather than resources, they find their way to Group 8. Word travels carefully. The prince doesn't recruit loudly. But the results of the Stage 2 and 3 exams have demonstrated something that the lowest-ranking cadets find compelling. This faction wins. By the time the faction stabilizes, 53 people have sworn into it. Here is where Yeo Woon does something that turns those 53 people from members into believers. He goes to the library again, upper floors this time, using his badge authority. Nano scans everything, every advanced technique, every elite art, every cultivated breathing method that the high clans have been hoarding since the academy's founding. Complete acquisition. Then he comes back to his room and sits down, and he starts writing. Not shorthand, not summaries, full, detailed copies, manually transcribed page by page, his hands ink-stained to the wrist, of dozens of techniques from the upper library floors. Techniques that, in the normal operation of the academy, only high clan heirs with family sponsorship could access. He copies them all. 99 advanced manuals, physical copies, distributed through the faction so that every member has direct access to arts that are supposed to be beyond their reach. He also writes something entirely new. The Universal Origin Art is a breathing and cultivation manual synthesized from scratch. Nano's analysis of every technique scanned from the library, compressed and restructured into a single foundational method optimized for practitioners without high clan physical conditioning. It's not a copy of anything in the library. It's better than most of what's in the library, specifically because it's designed for people the library was never designed to serve. When the 53 cadets receive their copies, some of them assume it's an elaborate gesture, a show of commitment from their faction leader. Then they start practicing. And the techniques work. The Universal Origin Art produces results faster than anything they've been given through official channels. The advanced manuals push their cultivation at rates that the normal academy curriculum doesn't approach. They figure out what happened, that he sat in his room and manually copied hundreds of pages of restricted arts to give them a fighting chance. That the Universal Origin Art was built for them specifically. The faction doesn't just swear loyalty after this, they weep. Grown martial artists who have been surviving through toughness and controlled emotion, weeping openly in a dormitory, and pledging themselves with the specific intensity of people who have never been treated as worth investing in before. Yeo Woon files this reaction away too, though with slightly different emotional processing than the combat data. Now the faction trains. 2 years pass. This is the part of the story that the academy doesn't fully track, because what happens in those 2 years is Yeo Woon's faction pulling so far ahead of the normal cultivation curve that by the time anyone runs the numbers, the gap is already too large to explain away. The inner circle rises to expert level. Not all of them, but enough. The core cadets who have been training hardest on the Universal Origin Art and the distributed techniques climb to a rank that most cadets at this stage of the program haven't reached. Hubong, the formerly bald Spring Clan spy, is almost unrecognizable from the sniveling figure who climbed through an infirmary window. Moon-koo's cultivation advances steadily behind her maintained cover, and Yeo Woon himself disappears into closed-door training. He has 90 years of internal energy. He has every technique in the library. He has the ancestral sword art. He has the universal origin art as a structural framework. What he does with all of this, sealed inside his room for the equivalent of a cultivation marathon, is pursue something that most martial artists consider theoretical rather than achievable: 5-element energy unification. The human body's internal energy flows through pathways that correspond to elemental properties. Most cultivators specialize. They build 1 or 2 pathways to exceptional depth and let the others develop normally. True unification across all 5 elements simultaneously is so structurally demanding that attempting it wrong doesn't just fail, it destroys the cultivation base trying. It's the kind of thing that gets discussed in advanced theory texts as a historical rarity, not a practical goal. Yeo Woon achieves it at the peak of the Academy Library. The moment of completion isn't announced. There's no visible explosion of power, no dramatic aura display. The library's upper floor is very quiet. What shifts is internal, every pathway reaching simultaneous peak resonance, the energy flowing in patterns that should conflict but instead harmonize. And somewhere inside that harmonic lock, the threshold that separates a master from a grandmaster gets crossed. He comes out of seclusion with long hair and tattered clothes, because that's what happens to someone who has been in closed-door training for 2 years and has not prioritized appearance. The timing is not accidental. His faction is under attack. A Vice Lord candidate from the Sword Clan has assembled a strike team and moved on Group 8 while the faction leader is in seclusion. A calculated decision based on the assumption that without Yeo Woon present, the faction's expert-level cadets are manageable targets. The Sword Clan candidate is high-level, confident, and has spent his time at the academy accumulating exactly the kind of martial prestige that makes people around him assume the fight is already won before it starts. He finds Yeo Woon standing between his team and the faction. What a grandmaster can do that a master cannot is this: energy control so refined that it becomes external. Not just internal reserves, actual projection of force into the surrounding environment, precise enough to manipulate physical objects at range. Telekinesis, in practical terms, though the cultivation world would describe it differently. Yeo Woon looks at the Sword Clan Vice Lord candidate and his assembled strike team and does not raise a weapon. He raises his hand. The entire squad is pinned. Invisible pressure, energy projected and locked around each person with precision targeting. The cultivator equivalent of a hand closing around each throat simultaneously. They drop into the snow and stay there, not dead, held, while the snow settles around them and the faction watches and nobody on the strike team can move a single finger. The Vice Lord candidate manages to struggle, makes it clear he's not going to stop. Yeo Woon responds to this information with characteristic efficiency. He severs the man's arm and releases the rest of the squad to carry the message back to the Sword Clan. The message is received. The faction watches all of this. The low-born cadets who pledged their lives to this man on the basis of handwritten cultivation manuals are now watching him pin a high clan strike team into snow with one hand while looking mildly inconvenienced. The oath they swore is starting to feel less like loyalty and more like the correct reading of a situation. Yeo Woon straightens his tattered robes, looks at his faction, tells them to prepare for Stage 4. Stage 4 leads into Stage 5, and both of them run through the same location: the Cave of the Sealed Demon, the underground complex beneath the academy that Yeo Woon mapped during his confinement. He has every corridor charted, every chamber entrance marked, with the rest of the student body is entering a labyrinth they've never seen. Yeo Woon is walking a route he's already memorized. The cave is not empty. Deep inside the complex, in a chamber that the academy's documentation treats as an advanced stage obstacle, something lives. An Imugi, an atmospheric plasma beast, a creature that exists at the intersection of raw elemental energy and something older than the cultivation system that tries to categorize it. It is massive. It generates atmospheric distortion in a wide radius just by existing. The energy it outputs during an aggressive display would flatten most expert-level cultivators. Yeo Woon does not try to kill it. He reads it. Nano's analysis runs on the Imugi's energy patterns, the way the creature's internal flows move, the natural circulation that the beast itself may not be fully conscious of. Every living thing with internal energy has a rhythm. The Imugi's rhythm is enormous and violent and magnificent, but it is still a rhythm, and rhythms can be matched. Yeo Woon begins a deliberate energy resonance. Not an attack, not a defense, a synchronization. He matches his own output to the Imugi's frequency, finds the harmonic point, and from there begins not fighting the creature's energy but redirecting it, guiding it. The way you don't wrestle a river but find the channel. The Imugi, which has been atmospheric chaos for longer than the Academy has existed, experiences, possibly for the first time, something that feels like stillness. The resonance completes, and when it does, Yeo Woon compresses the entire creature, its energy, its mass, its accumulated atmospheric power, down into a physical object. A black blade bracelet, dense, quiet, containing a compressed atmospheric plasma beast in a wearable accessory. This is not a conventional martial arts outcome. The Imugi's blood, gathered from the taming process, carries purification properties, concentrated elemental energy in a biological substrate that Nano can break down and redistribute. Yeo Woon brings it back to the faction. His core inner circle receives the purified blood as a direct cultivation enhancement, a shortcut that pushes their energy foundations past the normal ceiling for their stage. The faction that entered the Cave of the Sealed Demon exits it changed. Stage 6 is the final exam, and Stage 6 is public. The format is an open arena. Cadets are matched against opponents selected by the administration, and the entire remaining student population observes. The matchmaking is not random. The clans that have been watching Yeo Woon since day one, that have sent assassins and spies and clan heirs and political gambits in escalating desperation, have spent their last available move. Elder Bayu enters the arena, the Poison Clan Patriarch, 12th Council Elder, the man who designed the toxin that killed Yeo Woon's mother, the man who beat him in a confinement cell and poured an energy-draining poison down his throat with the unhurried confidence of someone executing a formality. He stands across the arena floor with the specific bearing of a man who has been killing problems for 60 years and sees no reason today should be different. He generates a violet fog, the Poison Clan's signature, Bayu's ultimate technique, a flesh-melting toxic cloud that saturates the air in a wide radius, so concentrated that the fog itself is visible as a deep purple haze. Contact with skin causes immediate cellular breakdown. Breathing it in causes internal collapse within minutes. The audience backs away from the arena edges. Several of the observing cadets are pressing cloth against their faces just from proximity. Yeo Woon walks into it. No hesitation, no protective technique visibly activated. He walks into the violet fog at a steady pace, while the crowd goes completely silent, because nobody walks into Bayu's fog and continues walking. That is not how this fog works. The physics of what they're watching does not match anything they've cataloged. Nano is running at maximum, cellular reconstruction at continuous speed, identifying every toxic compound as it makes contact, breaking down the molecular structure, rebuilding tissue faster than the fog can damage it. It's not that the fog isn't working, it's that the damage is being undone in real time, faster than it accumulates. The net effect is that Yeo Woon moves through a cloud that should be liquefying him with the casual pace of someone walking through light rain. Elder Bayu increases the output. Yeo Woon keeps walking. Bayu has been alive long enough and has seen enough combat to recognize the specific feeling of a situation going wrong. He escalates. Staff techniques, physical assault layered with toxic augmentation, strikes that channel the fog's compounds through direct contact. He is a legitimate master of his art, and he commits to it completely. Yeo Woon takes the staff strikes, absorbs them, not passively, but reading each impact, mapping the force vectors, finding the gaps in the rhythm. Bayu's staff patterns are refined and deep and executed with decades of mastery behind them. They are not executed against someone who has simulated thousands of hours of this style and then spent 2 years pushing his cultivation to Grandmaster while the Elder's own development stayed static. The staff work is countered, then broken. Then Bayu's weapon is out of his hands, and the old man is standing in his own violet fog, without his weapon, and with the slowly arriving understanding that the low-born prince he beat in a confinement cell and poisoned like a disposable problem is now holding him at absolute physical disadvantage. Bayu has one move left. A forbidden mutation technique, a last resort method that most Poison Clan cultivators don't survive using. His skin shifts, deep blue and purple spreading across his body as he channels every toxic reserve he has into a direct biological conversion, turning himself into a living weapon, an apocalyptic purge that concentrates every poison he's ever cultivated into a single full-body release. The audience sees his skin change color and starts moving away from the arena entirely. Yeo Woon looks at the old man. This man who killed his mother, who beat him in a cell, who has spent this entire fight trying to end him the same way he ended everyone who ever got in his family's way, and reaches for the black blade bracelet on his wrist. The compressed Imugi energy unlocks. The white dragon blade, formed from a tamed atmospheric plasma beast, carrying elemental energy of a completely different order than anything the Poison Clan's toxic arts operate in, materializes in his hand. The two forces in this arena are not balanced. They were never going to be balanced. The Elder spent his career mastering one element of cultivation. The Prince standing across from him spent 2 years unifying 5. Bayu is in the middle of his forbidden mutation. Skin deep blue-purple, toxic purge building toward critical mass, committed fully to a technique that does not have a reversal step. He is betting everything on the output being enough to end this. Yeo Woon raises the white dragon blade. The crowd that started backing away from the arena edges has gone completely still. Everyone watching, high clan heirs, low-born cadets, academy instructors, the clan observers who have been managing the political calculus of this problem for years, all of them are watching the same thing. The low-born, banned, written-off 7th prince of the demonic cult standing completely unharmed inside a legendary poison master's ultimate technique, holding a weapon made from a tamed atmospheric plasma beast, preparing to deliver the final strike against the man who murdered his mother. The violet fog churns around him. The white blade rises. The blade comes down, not with rage, not with the shaking hands of a boy who spent years watching his mother deteriorate while everyone with the power to stop it looked away. With the absolute stillness of someone who has already processed every version of this moment 1,000 times and arrived at the same answer every time. The white dragon blade meets the mutation. Bayu's forbidden technique was built on the assumption that nothing in the Academy's current generation could match its output, that the sheer volume of concentrated toxins released in a full-body purge would overwhelm any defense, any counter, any technique the opposition could bring. That assumption was correct for every opponent Elder Bayu had ever faced before today. The Imugi's compressed energy operates on a different register entirely. Atmospheric plasma at the scale of a creature that generates environmental distortion just by existing. That is not a cultivation resource that fits neatly into the Poison Clan's threat matrix. The white blade cuts through the toxic purge not by matching it chemically, but by operating above the plane where the chemistry matters. The mutation technique, Bayu's absolute final move, the technique he was willing to risk his own survival to deploy, it doesn't stop the blade. Nothing stops the blade. Bayu goes down, not dead. Yeo Woon is too precise for accidents and too calculating for waste. The Elder hits the arena floor with the specific damage profile of someone who has been decisively ended as a threat without being removed as a future resource. Broken. Contained. Alive enough to be used. Because a dead Elder is just a dead Elder. A broken one, carried out of an arena by the man everyone told was powerless, in front of every witness the Academy contains. That is a statement. Yeo Woon walks out of the violet fog carrying Elder Bayu. Let that settle for a moment. The flesh-melting cloud that the entire audience retreated from, that senior instructors were treating as an environmental hazard from 50 meters away, Yeo Woon walks back out of it at the same unhurried pace he walked in, completely unmarked, holding the unconscious body of the Poison Clan's patriarch like he's carrying luggage. The arena is silent. Not the polite silence of a crowd watching a close match. The absolute silence of several hundred people simultaneously recalibrating everything they thought they knew about the last 4 years. The low-born cadets who have been the lowest rung of this institution's hierarchy since the gates opened. The high clan heirs who have been operating on the assumption that bloodline and resources and political backing were the variables that determined outcomes. The instructors who have watched Yeo Woon since day one and filed him under surprising but limited. Every single person in that arena is doing the same calculation and arriving at the same result. They were wrong. Completely, systematically, embarrassingly wrong. The clan observers in the upper tiers are having a different reaction. Quieter. The specific stillness of people who understand political consequences and are already mapping what this moment means for every arrangement they've made, every assumption they've built strategy around, every move they've committed to in the last 4 years that was predicated on the 7th prince being a manageable problem. He is not a manageable problem. He never was. The faction watches their leader set Elder Bayu down at the arena's edge with the casual efficiency of someone completing an errand. Hubong, formerly bald Spring Clan spy, currently one of the most devoted people in the building, is maintaining an expression of composed loyalty with the specific effort of a man who wants very badly to react, but understands that his role in this moment is to project quiet certainty rather than shock. He's projecting it well. Moonku is not bothering to hide anything. She watches Yeo Woon walk out of the fog, and her composure does exactly what composure does when it meets something it wasn't braced for. She recovers fast. But there's a moment. The 53 cadets who received handwritten cultivation manuals and wept in a dormitory about being seen as worth investing in, they're standing at the faction's edge watching the arena and understanding with complete clarity that the oath they swore was not sentiment, it was strategy. The man they pledged to didn't just beat the Poison Clan elder in a public arena, he beat the architect of his mother's death, in front of everyone, on a stage the clans built specifically to demonstrate their continued dominance. The stage is no longer theirs. What happens in the aftermath is not a celebration. Yeo Woon doesn't celebrate, he takes stock. The Academy's 6-stage gauntlet is functionally complete. Stage 6 was the final examination, and the results are not ambiguous. His faction has cleared every stage. His personal cultivation sits at Grandmaster, a level that senior instructors don't reliably reach. He holds a reconstructed ancestral sword art. He has a compressed atmospheric plasma beast on his wrist. He has 53 cultivators who have trained on elite techniques and would follow him into situations considerably more dangerous than a graduation exam. And he has a list of debts that Stage 6 didn't finish paying. Elder Bayu is neutralized but alive, a conscious calculation, because the Elder's confession about the original poisoning is worth more than his death. The Poison Clan is broken as an immediate threat but not dismantled. Jong Soon is still breathing somewhere, his Dantian destroyed, preserved specifically so his testimony can be used. The Spring Clan heir whose bones got rearranged in a training forest is a closed account. His half-sister, who came at him with a killing technique in a group exam, is another closed account. But the woman who ordered his mother's death is not. The Veiled Lady, the figure from one of the 5 remaining clans who originally commissioned the Poison Clan to deploy the toxin. Jong Soon knew she existed and didn't know who she was. Nobody Yeo Woon has broken or recruited since has been able to provide a name. She is still out there, operating behind political distance, and she is the reason the accounting isn't finished. This is the thread that doesn't resolve in an arena. The Academy itself is a closed system. 4 years, 6 stages, done. What the demonic cult actually is, beyond these walls, is the larger board. The Cult Lord candidacy, the political process by which the next generation of power structures gets determined, is where the real game begins. Clearing the Academy with a faction of 53 expert-level cultivators and a Grandmaster's personal combat ability puts Yeo Woon on that board in a way that the clans cannot vote away or bureaucratically exclude. They tried exclusion on day 1, they stole his badge, they made him stand outside the gate while everyone else filed in. The institution that was supposed to grind him into labor camp dust has instead produced the most dangerous graduate in its current class, possibly in the last several classes. The irony has not escaped him. The faction structure is worth understanding, because what Yeo Woon built here is not just a personal army, it's a proof of concept. Take low-born cultivators with no clan resources and no political backing, give them access to elite techniques calibrated to their actual physical foundation, and what you produce is not a support unit. What you produce is a core. The 53 are expert level now, several of them pushing toward master. In a world where master-level cultivators are considered serious political assets, having 53 of them personally loyal to you is not a small thing. The universal origin art will keep working after they leave the Academy. The breathing method Yeo Woon synthesized doesn't have a ceiling that caps out at expert. It was designed with the same foundational structure that let him achieve 5-element unification. Given time, the inner circle will climb further. He built them a ladder that doesn't end at the floor the clans expected them to occupy. Hubong specifically has become something worth noting. The man who arrived in the infirmary in the middle of the night to sever tendons is now a cultivator, with a cultivation base that eclipses anything his original Spring Clan handlers would have expected from him, and an organizational competence that makes him genuinely useful as a faction coordinator. The humiliation of the interrogation didn't break him. It redirected him with the specific totality of someone who has found, possibly for the first time, a situation where their full effort actually matters to someone who can see it. Moonku's situation has shifted. Her original goal, accumulating enough status to protect her disabled brother from being used as expendable military resource, has been achieved by a margin that makes the original threat essentially irrelevant. The clans that plan to deploy her brother as convenient cannon fodder are not currently in a position to be making deployment decisions about anyone. The Poison Clan's patriarch is sitting in a medical wing. The Spring Clan's academy presence was neutralized at multiple stages. The Blade Clan heir lost an arm and a significant amount of institutional credibility. Her brother is safe, not because she maneuvered carefully through clan politics, though she did, because she chose the right faction on the right night in a dormitory where a grandmaster in progress identified her through a prosthetic skin mask and decided she was worth protecting. The bond between them has not been formally named. This is consistent with how Yeo Woon handles most things that don't have tactical labels. He files them and continues operating. But the moment in his private room when the mask came off and he saw who was actually standing there, and the accumulation of 2 years of shared dormitory logistics and faction building, and her watching him walk out of a poison fog carrying an elder, that is not nothing. That is considerable something, operating under the surface of two people who are very good at composure. The awkward dormitory bathing situation has not been fully resolved. It is ongoing. What happens next is not contained in the Academy's walls. The graduation from the 6-stage program produces, formally, a new cohort of cult members with ranked standing. In the normal operation of the institution, this means assignment to various departments and factions within the cult's broader power structure, with high clan heirs slotting into positions that were prepared for them, and low-born graduates taking whatever's left. The clans have been managing this process for generations. The graduating class is supposed to reinforce existing power structures, not disrupt them. This graduating class has a problem. The existing power structure's representative elder is currently being tended to by medical staff after being carried out of a Stage 6 arena by the man those power structures spent 4 years trying to eliminate. The Cult Lord candidacy process, the mechanism by which the demonic cult determines its next generation of leadership, requires candidates to demonstrate both combat dominance and factional support. Combat dominance, established. Factional support from 53 personally loyal cultivators, plus a network of lower-ranking graduates who have watched the 7th Prince clear 6 stages, while every obstacle the clans threw at him became either a resource or a corpse. Also established, in the specific way that watching someone do something impossible makes you want to be on their side when they do the next thing. Yeo Woon has not announced a candidacy. He doesn't need to announce it. The arena just announced it for him, to every witness the Academy contained, with Elder Baeyu's unconscious body as the punctuation. The Cult Lord himself, the man who looked through his 7th son at the opening ceremony with the total indifference of someone who has genuinely forgotten a piece of furniture exists, is going to need to reckon with this. Not yet. The timing of that reckoning is not determined by sentiment. It's determined by when Yeo Woon has enough leverage that the reckoning produces the outcome he wants, rather than just the confrontation he's owed. He's patient. He has demonstrated this patience across 4 years of systematic dismantling. The Veiled Lady is the priority. Everything else, the Lord candidacy, the cult's internal power restructuring, the long-term fate of the 6 ruling clans, is secondary to finding the woman who gave the order to poison his mother. Jong Soon's information was partial. The Poison Clan was commissioned by someone, a woman with enough standing in one of the other 5 clans to direct the Patriarch. She was careful. She used intermediaries. The direct evidence chain ends at the Poison Clan's doorstep, and the Poison Clan is now available for testimony, but is not known for its transparent record-keeping. Nano can help with some of this. The chemical breakdown capability that synthesized a crude antidote to keep Jong Soon alive for testimony can also analyze the original toxin's composition in enough detail to narrow down which clan's pharmaceutical resources were involved in its production. Poison formulas have signatures, base compounds, catalysts, specific molecular choices that reflect the knowledge base of whoever designed them. The Poison Clan executed the delivery. The design might point somewhere. This is not the work of an arena fight. This is the work of time, access, and the kind of patience that survives 4 years in an institution designed to kill you. But Yeo Woon has demonstrated he has that patience in quantities that exceed anyone's estimate of him. The academy doors, when they open to release this graduating class, open onto a cult that has been operating under a set of assumptions for the last 4 years. Assumptions about which candidates matter, which bloodlines produce threats, which low-born accidents of birth can be safely ignored. Those assumptions were built on a world where the seventh prince stayed powerless and broken, and eventually disappeared into a labor camp or a forest somewhere, which is what the blood oath and the assassins and the stolen entrance badge and Elder Bayou's poison were all supposed to guarantee. Every single guarantee failed, and the person all those guarantees were designed to contain is walking out of those doors with a black blade bracelet containing a compressed atmospheric plasma beast, a sword art that hasn't existed for generations, 53 cultivators at his back, and a list. The list is short. It has one item left on it that matters. Find the woman who ordered his mother's death. Everything else, the power, the candidacy, the faction, the eventual confrontation with a father who looked through him on the first day, is infrastructure. It's the architecture being built to support the one thing that has been true since he was a child, watching his mother deteriorate and understanding, with the specific clarity of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to understand, that the people who did this were going to eventually have to face what they did. He wasn't powerless then. He was early. Now he's on time. They understand power that announces itself, cultivation levels that climb visibly through the ranks, martial reputations built in public duels, factional strength measured in clan names and hereditary resources. They have spent generations building systems to monitor, contain, and if necessary, eliminate threats that present in these recognizable forms. The machinery works. It has worked for as long as the cult has existed. What it was never designed to handle is a threat that looks like nothing until it's already finished. 4 years ago, a badgeless boy stood outside the academy gates while every legitimate cadet filed past him. The clans arranged that moment deliberately, a public humiliation designed to establish, on the very first day, the exact social position this particular inconvenience was going to occupy. It worked perfectly as a display of dominance. What it also did was hand Yeo Woon 4 uninterrupted years inside an institution the clans believed they controlled completely, surrounded by resources they assumed were inaccessible to him, facing opponents they believed were categorically superior. Every single assumption was load-bearing. Every single assumption was wrong. The machinery of clan power, the assassins, the spies, the political exclusions, the carefully arranged exam matchups, the elder deployed to a confinement cell with a draining poison, didn't eliminate the threat. It educated it. Every attack taught Yeo Woon something. Every resource deployed against him either failed to land or got converted. The Dragon Sphere pill that Sub brought him converted into 30 years of cultivation. Elder Bayou's own poison converted into 60 more. The library they restricted converted into a complete internal archive. The ancestral tomb they forgot about converted into a sword art that hasn't been seen for centuries. The clans spent 4 years funding his development while believing they were containing it. This is the thing that will take them time to fully absorb. Not the arena result, that's visible, comprehensible, a loss they can assign a number to and begin strategizing around. The deeper problem is the architecture of how it happened. Because the same logic that turned every attack into a resource didn't stop working when the academy gates opened. It's not a phase. It's not a 4-year tactical approach that ends with graduation. It's how Yeo Woon processes the world. Find the constraint. Find what the constraint is made of. Take it apart and use the components. The 6 ruling clans, as a constraint, are made of the same components everything else has been made of: resources, information, vulnerabilities, and people who underestimate what they're dealing with. He has time. The demonic cult's internal calendar is not in a hurry. Lord candidacy processes unfold over years, not months. Political coalitions shift slowly. The clans that are currently recalibrating in the wake of Stage 6 will spend the next several months running internal assessments, restructuring their academic-facing strategies, and trying to determine whether the 7th Prince is a temporary disruption or a structural problem. They will reach the correct conclusion eventually. But they'll reach it while Yeo Woon is already several moves ahead of where they think he is. The faction moves with him. 53 people walking out of the demonic academy with expert-level cultivation, elite technique libraries, and a shared history of watching their leader survive things that shouldn't be survivable. These are not the low-born cadets who entered 4 years ago. Something changed in them, and the change isn't just the power, It's the understanding of what power can actually do when it isn't gatekept by bloodline. The universal origin art is still working. Every day they practice, the ceiling climbs. Several of the inner circle are within striking distance of Master. Hubong, who started as a Spring Clan errand runner sent to sever tendons in the dark, is pushing toward a cultivation level that would have been unimaginable for someone of his background before Yeo Woon sat down and manually copied 100 pages of restricted arts with ink-stained hands. The gap between what they were supposed to be and what they are is now so wide that the original parameters feel like a different story entirely. Munku walks beside him, not close enough that anyone watching would read it as anything other than a faction member in proximity to her leader. She is very good at maintaining calibrated distances. 2 years of sharing dormitory space with men who have no idea she's a woman has produced, among other things, an exceptional ability to modulate exactly how much of herself she allows to be visible at any given moment. But she walks beside him, and the distance she maintains is the distance of someone who has made a specific decision about how close they're willing to be, while remaining technically within the bounds of plausible neutrality. Yeo Woon notices this the way he notices everything. Completely, immediately, filed under a category that doesn't have a tactical label, but exists in the same internal architecture, where everything else gets stored. He doesn't comment. He is consistent about not commenting on things that don't have a clear operational purpose, which covers more than he perhaps intends it to. Her brother is safe. That was the thing she came here to accomplish. The goal that justified the mask and the risk and the 4 years of maintained performance. It's done. What she does next is not determined by obligation. The debt is settled. The protection is secured. What she does next is a choice. She keeps walking beside him. Her brother, when he sees his sister again, will see someone who entered the academy as a gamble and emerged as an expert-level cultivator with direct access to a grandmaster's personal technique library and a standing in a faction that is about to become one of the most politically significant forces in the demonic cult. He'll also see someone who has clearly made a decision, even if that decision hasn't been named out loud yet. Some things don't need to be named to be real. The cave beneath the academy, the labyrinth that Yeo Woon mapped during confinement, that housed the Imugi, that produced the black blade bracelet and the purifying blood and the elemental power that his inner circle carries now, is not fully explored. The architectural model Nano built covers what he walked through. The chamber where the Imugi rested. The corridors leading to it. The entrance passages that the Academy uses as Stage 4 and 5 exam terrain. But the map has edges. Corridors that branch in directions Nano flagged and didn't follow. Sealed doors that registered on the visual scan without being opened. The Cave of the Sealed Demon, not a casual name. Not the kind of institutional label that gets attached to something that's fully understood. The ceiling implies something was contained. The demon implies that whatever was contained is not a cultivation resource that fit neatly into the Academy's existing taxonomy. He knows where the entrance is, he has the map to the edges of what was explored, and he has a cultivator's understanding of what it means when a power structure builds its most important institution directly over something it decided to seal rather than destroy. It means they couldn't destroy it. This is not an immediate problem. It's a future asset, held in the same mental file as the Veiled Lady and the cultivation candidacy and the eventual conversation with a father who has been operating under the assumption that ignoring his 7th son was a permanent solution. None of these threads close on the Academy's schedule. They close on Yeo Woon's schedule. He is 20-something years old with the cultivation of a Grand Master, the political foundation of a Lord candidacy, 53 people who would die for him, an unsolved murder that belongs to someone still walking free, and a compressed atmospheric plasma beast on his wrist. He has barely started. The cult outside the Academy walls has been running on a fixed model for generations. Power flows from the 6 clans downward, with the Lord at the apex as the theoretical ultimate authority, and the clans as the practical machinery of everything below it. The Lord commands, the clans execute. The clans advise, the Lord legitimizes. It's a functional closed system that has perpetuated itself by ensuring that every variable with the potential to disrupt it gets neutralized before it accumulates enough force to matter. The 7th prince was supposed to be neutralized at the Blood Oath. When that didn't hold at the entrance gate, when that didn't hold in the forest before he reached the academy, when that didn't hold in the infirmary, when that didn't hold across 6 examination stages, when that didn't hold in a confinement cell with a carefully administered poison. 6 attempts, 6 failures. Each one contributing to the very thing it was trying to stop. The clans understand now, intellectually, that they have a Grandmaster problem who is also a Lord Candidacy problem, who is also a faction problem, who is also a living public demonstration that their model of power is not as airtight as 4 generations of successful gatekeeping suggested. What they don't yet understand, what they won't understand until it's too late to matter, is that the problem isn't just him. The problem is the proof of concept. 53 cultivators from low-born backgrounds who reached expert level on a synthesized technique that Yeo Woon built from scratch and distributed freely, that is not a one-time result. That is a demonstration that the resource monopoly the clans have maintained over cultivation knowledge is not structurally necessary. It's politically enforced. The moment that distinction becomes visible to enough people, the enforcement mechanism stops working, because the enforcement depends on everyone below the line accepting that the line is natural rather than constructed. The 53 know it isn't natural. They live the proof, and they're going to go back to the cult's broader world carrying that knowledge in their cultivation bases, in every technique they practice, in every junior cultivator they eventually teach. The disruption that the clans tried to prevent with a blood oath and a series of increasingly desperate assassination attempts is not contained in one person. It walked out of the academy in 53 bodies, with more to follow. This is the thing Elder Bayu, lying in a medical wing with a body that will take months to functionally repair, was actually trying to prevent. Not the individual threat, the idea, the specific, demonstrable, repeatable idea that the power hierarchy everyone has been treating as fixed is actually a choice, and that a different choice produces different results. Yeo Woon gave that idea to 53 people by sitting in a room and copying cultivation manuals with ink-stained hands. He will give it to more. The sun moves across the sky above the academy grounds. The graduating class mills in the open space beyond the examination arenas, the social sorting that always follows the end of a program. High clan heirs consolidating, low-born graduates calculating their next moves, the ordinary business of a generation finding its configuration. And at the edge of it, a man with long hair and a black blade bracelet and tattered robes that he has not gotten around to replacing stands with his faction around him and looks at the world beyond the gates. His mother's killer is still out there. His father is still on a throne, built partly on looking away. The veiled lady is still unnamed. The sealed thing beneath the cave is still sealed. And none of it, not the blood oath, not the assassins, not 6 stages of elimination trials designed to grind down anyone without the right bloodline. None of it stopped him. The gates open. He walks through them.